Stop building spreadsheets and start building applications. What you're looking at is a fully functional business system with integrated invoicing, purchasing, inventory management, and a live dashboard, all built inside Excel. And in the next 60 minutes, we're going to build the exact same thing from a completely blank worksheet. This is the kind of system that freelancers are charging $2,000 to $5,000 to deploy to clients. Stay with me and I'm going to show you every line. All right, thanks so much for joining me. Super happy to have you here. We're going to be creating this mini RP complete with invoicing and purchasing all in one, wrapped up with full inventory management and a mini dashboard. We're going to be creating it from a blank worksheet. All the functions and all the code will be writing for you. If you do want this template, it's absolutely free. All you need to do is click the link down below. If you're on YouTube, look for the word download. Under that, there'll be a link. And if you're on my website, look for the download word button. We're going to be creating this. I'm going to clear out this and we're going to get started right now. We're going to be moving rather quickly on this one. I'm going to use the first two columns as a gray color for our admin. I'm going to add in a background on that. So to do that, I'll be browsing for the one. I've got one saved here for our sheet and I'll be inserting that. Now inside that, we won't need the grid lines, but I'll keep them for now. That first type, I want to select between an order type. Now that order type is going to be either purchase or it's going to be invoice. So I'm going to use a data validation for just that. So I'm going to use a list. Users are going to be able to select between purchase or invoice. That is going to be a user defined field. I also want to give them the ability to search. So I'm going to be able to search order. So they need to do that. Now these two fields are going to be user entered. So we want to give those a white background to do that. And I'm going to hold down the control and right justify these. That's going to be our header. Now we're going to have our invoice header. Our invoice is going to cover all the way from column D through H and all the way down to about, let's say 37. So I'm going to give that a white color. We're going to go into the fill. I'm going to give it a white color. And we're going to give it a border, just a thick border all the way around so we can understand exactly where our invoice is coming from. This first cell, this is going to be merged and centered. Now this is going to be based off this. So if they make a purchase, it's going to say purchase and invoice. But I want it all in capitals. So I'm going to use the upper equals upper. And basically whatever the user selects inside E1. And then we're going to just hit parentheses, and that's going to give it a purchase, but I do want to add some formatting on that. So to do that, we're just going to give it a color and we'll just do something like this. Okay, so that means as they change the purchase or the invoice, it's going to change up here. Next up, I do want them to add in a name here. So I'm going to put inside D4 a name. Let's do D3 name. Now inside that, I'm going to put an underline on that and we'll right justify that. They'll enter the names. We're going to be adding some data validation to that shortly. We also need an order number. Both purchase and invoice will have orders. They will also have date. And I want to know the status of each one of those. These are going to be right justified. And I want to put an underline on each one of those so that we can clearly see that. I'm going to hold the control down and put underlines on those. Next up, we need some admin information. So I want the order ID to be in B2. I also want the row of the order. So we're going to put that in B3. I also want the next order ID, and also in B5 I want to put the search order. That's going to help us locate that search, and the name type. Now the name type is going to be based on this. For example, we have different names here in the database. They can be customers or they can be vendors. So I want to know what type it is inside here. So equals, if we're going to put this as an invoice, our name type equals invoice, then our name type is going to be customer if it's an invoice. So I'm just going to put in customer. Otherwise, it's going to be a vendor. So we'll just put in vendor. That's going to help us determine what type of name is going to be going in. Once we have that, we understand. So as soon as we change that to a purchase, it's going to say vendor. And that's going to tie in very well with our names list right here. So next up, what we also want to have is, let's just color these here since those are going to be for admin, and we'll give those some borders. I also want to have the names here. It's going to be dynamic. So our name list is going to be based on whether it is a vendor or whether it is a customer. Next up, what we want to do is I want to go down here and I want to put inside the item. So I'm going to put in, this is an item. This is going to be a description. And next up, we'll have the quantity, QTY. And I also want the amount and the total. So we'll put that in here. We're going to format those. So I'm just going to highlight all of them. I'll move them to the center. I'm going to add borders all the way around. And we're just going to give them a blue color here, something default. I like the way that looks, and just make them bold. Now, what we also want to have is I've got to be able to add in some totals and some message here. So I want the total here. So I'm going to hold down the control and I'm just going to add a border. Let's do a thin border here, and that's going to be sufficient. I want the total just to go here. We'll put in total, and I'm going to right justify that. Simply, the total is simply going to be the sum of whatever it is, equals the sum of the entire column here. So as we add items, it's going to automatically add up. Once we have that, we can also add a message down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to merge and center this one here, and we're just going to put in thank you for your order. And then we can center that and put that in the middle, and then just make it bold and italicized, increase the font, and we can just change the font a little bit. So we've got that. That looks nice. Now what we want to have is just put some diagonal lines in here so that we can clearly decipher the columns here. I'll put it a dotted line, and that's going to be the vertical lines here. Once we have that, we're going to add in our items here, and we're also going to want to make sure that we link that order number. That means the order number that's going to be displayed is going to be linked to whatever is located in B2. So if I put in order number 1 here, I want this order linked to whatever is located in B2. It's always going to stay. I'm going to left justify these items here. We want the date. This is going to be formatted as a short date, and that's to be sufficient. The name is going to be a drop-down list based on whether it's a purchase or a vendor. And so we're going to use a filter command. But what I want to do is I want to give this a name. We're going to call this name type. So I want to know what type it is. Once I have that set, I want to use a filter command, and I'm going to show you what I mean. It means based on what that name type, I want to show all the customers or all the vendors, and I want to show a list right around here. We can use the filter command to do just that. Equals filter. Now, what am I going to be filtering? Our names list, which is right there, as you can see. And I want to look in the name. So I'm just going to look in the name. Now, you can use the bracket for that. Inside that name, what do I want to find? I want to be able to locate names when it's equal to a specific name type. I'm looking for a type. And what is the type that we're looking for? It's going to be equal to whatever's in the name type. So that's the name range that we just created. And if it's not found, I'm just going to leave it blank. And so basically, now we have a list. So you see how these are vendors, bulk supplies and prime parts. If we go into the ERP and we change this to an invoice, those are going to be the customer names. Now it's listing the customer names. So now all we need is a drop down list of order names. So we're going to go to the name manager. I'm going to click new. And we're just going to call it order names. And we're going to use the offset command, equals offset. And I'm just going to select the first one here. And then count A based on how many are on. I'll just use a large number of rows. And then what we're going to do is comma 1. So now we tab out and we tab back in. We see that our order names, I'm going to copy that, the dancing ants are based around the data, which is exactly what we want. I'm going to click OK, and then I'm going to close this. Now these are our order names. Now if I go into the ERP and I select the names, and what I'm going to do is going to go into the data validation here. I'm going to list, and I'm just going to see equals, and then I'm going to paste in the named range. So if we look in this, we see now that it's Fred Fretters and Lisa James. Those are both customers. If I am going to change this to purchase, we see that the drop-down list now is both vendors. So that's kind of a nice way to do dynamic names. Inside our order, what I need is a list of data, right? So for our item names, so we have here some products. We want to create a list for our orders. And to do that, we've got a table already for products, and item name is what we want. So I'm going to go into the formulas and the name manager, and I'm just going to click new. We're going to call this item names. Basically, it's going to be the products and the item name. So if we tab out, tab back in, we see the dancing ants. I'm going to copy the item names, and I'm going to click OK. Now we want to take that new drop-down list inside our ERP, and for the entire column, we want a data validation. To do that, we'll go into the data Data validation, we're going to click list. We're simply going to paste in item names. Now we have a list of item names for our order, and that's exactly what we want, right? If we have order ID number 1 selected, I want to know what row that's in. So we see that it's on row 3 here. And we also see that we have a table called orders. So to extract that, we're going to use the match formula. So I'm going to use equals if error. I'm going to match. What am I looking up? I'm looking up this order ID, and I'm looking it up in the orders table. So I'm going to type in orders. And also we're going to focus on that item ID. That ID is right here, the order ID. That is the table. Next up, what we want to do is I want to an exact match. And I want to add 2 because I want to pull the first row. If it's an error, going to show empty. That tells me that order ID number 1 is on row 3 and 2 is on row 4. Now the next one, I'm going to use exactly the same named range, orders and order ID. But this time what I want to do is I want to use the max formula to get the next ID. To do that, I'm going to type in equals and then if error max. And what is the max? The max of the order ID plus 1. If there's no data, I'm just going to default it to 1. If the user searches for an order and they enter order number 1 here, I want to know the row, and I want to basically copy this formula here, and I want to know exactly what row it's on. Of course, it's not based on B2 this time. It's based on whatever they enter in H1. So if they enter something incorrect, it's going to be blank. And if I can check B5, if it's blank, then I know they've entered correct. So that's good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bold these up here because they're kind of important. Next up, I think our invoice is just about done. We don't need the grid lines anymore, so we can remove them. I'm going to remove them. We also need some button sets to be able to add, save, update, and print. So I'm going to click Insert Shapes. I'm going to use the rounded rectangle here, and I'm just going to bring a button right up here. I'm going to put them in the middle and right justify it, and we're just going to call this New Order. Once I have the size about the way I want it, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to format that just the way I like it before I go ahead and duplicate it. Once I have it just the way I want it, let's go ahead and add a shadow onto that one. We can use this one right here. I like this one right here. All right, so now that we have that, I am going to then duplicate it using Control D, and I want another button for save order. So I'm simply going to change this to save. And then once again, Control D, we need another one for the print the order. So I'm just going to call this print. And lastly, we also need to be able to delete an order. So that's the last button, delete order. We're also going to add some icons, which I have there. Once we create all the buttons, we can then add those icons. If we notice that we're a little bit shy on the width of those, so I'm going to select each one of those and then just increase the width very slightly. I want them in the middle and I want them equal distance apart. So we're good to go on that. Saving our work so far, I'm going to insert the icons. So they're going to be based on the pictures, and I want those over the cells. So I have them saved up. They're inside here. I'll make them all available on my Patreon. I'm going to insert those, and I want to set each one to point to. Once I do that, it's just a matter of placing them directly over the buttons. So this is going to be for our new order. This will be for our delete. This will be for our print, and this will be for our save. Once we have that, I'm simply going to center those and then group them together by selecting each one of those, putting it in the middle, and then grouping it. And I'll do this for each individual button to make it a lot easier, and then also make sure that they line up. Once I have that, we can then later, we're going to write some macros, and then we'll go ahead and add those in. All right, so now that we've got our button sets in, so our design is pretty much set. And next up, what I'd like to do is we're going to add in the formula for totals. And basically, it's going to be equal the quantity times the amount. So we're going to multiply times and then the amount. So that's going to be it. We're going to carry down that formula all the way down here. So I'm just going to copy that and bring it all the way down here. And we're just going to paste in the formulas here. Once we do that, we also need to check to make sure that it's working. So I'm going to hit the quantity and then 15, and then we'll just go ahead and change it. So our formula is working, but we do need the format set. So I'm going to hold down the shift and the control because they're all going to be set to either currency or amount. We can do either one. I think that's fine. This one should be bolded, so I'm going to put bold on that one. And our total set, and we just want to center the quantity in the column, so we can hold down that. Now it's centered. All right, so I like that. Now what we want to do, when I make a change to the item, I want the description, we'll default the quantity to 1 in the amount. Now if we take a look inside our products, I've got a cost and I've got a sales price. If it's a purchase, if we're making a purchase, I want the cost to appear from column E. If it's an invoice, I want the sales price to be displayed. So based on whatever type it is in here, we will then display the amount and the total will automatically come. So how are we going to do that? Well, let's go ahead and add in some VBA to help us to do just that. We're going to go into the developer. If you don't have that available, just make sure you right click and customize the ribbon. Make sure developer is selected here. We're going to go into the Visual Basic, and I've got another sample open here, but don't worry about that. Let me shrink up this screen, and now we can write some code. So basically, when we make a change, it's going to be directly on the ERP. And I'm looking for a worksheet change, meaning we're going to make a change to specific cells, which is the change event here. We don't need selection change at this time. When the user makes a change, what kind of a change they're looking at? Any cells from D7 all the way through D35. So that's what we're going to focus on. All right, so if the user makes a change from D7 all the way through D35, in that case, we want to also make sure that and range D and the target row dot value does not equal empty. Then what do we want to do? Then I want to actually add something. Oops, let's just get rid of that. So then I want to make sure that we're going to add in the necessary data, but I need to know what row. Dimension the product row as long, because we need to know what the product row is. How do we know the product row? Well, what we can do is we can look for it. We've already created the item named range, and we can use that. If it's not found, we could create an error. So let's go ahead and write that up. So the product row is going to be equal to products.range, and we can use the item name. So item names, remember we created names for that. So let's just take a look to review just so we know we're on top of that. It's called item names right here. So that's the named range that we're going to be looking inside. So item names, and we're going to look for something. What are we looking for? I'm looking for whatever the user just made a change called target value. I'm going to look in Excel values, and I'm going to look in Excel whole. So we're looking at that, and I want to return the row. Let's see if it's found. Message box row. I'm just going to test it out. So we want the product row. So when I double click this, it's simply going to make the change, and it's going to tell me that 16 gig DDR is on row 4. So we're going to look in our products, and we're going to make sure that it is on row 4, which is correct. So now that we have the row, what I simply want to do is I want to populate the description in column C. I want to default the quantity to 1, and then I want to put either the sale or the purchase amount here inside column G. So that's what we're going to do. So the next thing we want to do is we're going to do range, and I'm going to bring this up a little bit here so we can see both. We're going to focus on column E is going to take on the description. Range E and the target dot row dot value is equal to products dot range, and it's coming from column C and the product row dot value. That is our description. Next up, we also want to enter a default quantity that is going to go directly into column F. So I'm going to change this to F, set this equal to 1. Now this is our default quantity. Okay, now what we want to do inside column G is either enter the cost or the sales price. So if range E1, so it's E1, right? That's going to be whether it's purchase E1 dot value is equal to purchase. Then what do we want to do? Then I want to enter the cost. So range G and our target dot row dot value is equal to products dot range, and our cost is coming from column E of our products and our product row dot value. So this is our cost. Now I'm going to copy that right here. But what if it's not? What if it's an invoice? Then I want the sales. So else sales is coming from column F. So this is our sales price. Sales price. Just to review, quick review, we're going to go into the products. We see here that our cost is in column E and our sales price is column F. So that's just the way I want it. So let's take a look at that. And we're going to go into this. If it's a purchase, I'm going to double click this. We see our description, amount 55, perfect. If it's an invoice, and then we double click it, the sale price is going to be 85. So we know things are working perfectly. All right, so now that we have our items automating based on an invoice, we also have our customers we're going to insure. We have our order, we're going to date, status. Now we're ready to write the macros for new, save, print, and delete. So let's go ahead and go back in there. We're going to create a module. So I'm going to insert a module here, and we're going to write our code inside this module. We want to create several macros, but they're not going to be long. And I want to dimension variables that are going to cover us for all. Dimension, order, row as long, last row as long, item row as long, item database row as long, and maybe last result row as long. So that makes it a lot easier. Next up, what I want to do is sub order and then add new. We also need sub order, save update, and we also have to have a load. So we've got sub order and then it's going to load. We want to be able to print and delete. Sub order, print is just one line of code, and then sub order delete. Great, so that's the framework of our macros. For add new, it's going to be relatively easy. We're focused on the ERP here. That is our sheet code name. Inside that, we need to clear some ranges. We need B2, I want that order ID cleared. I also want E3, which is our name. We need to clear that out. H1 is our search order. We can clear out any searches. H5, what is that? Let's drop this down so we can get a look at exactly what is in those cells. It is our status, so I want to clear the status out. Also, we're going to be using column C as well. That's going to keep track of one of the row numbers. And so I'm going to clear out all this. So C7 all the way through G35. I want those cleared out too. C7 through G35. Dot clear contents. For new orders, we're going to set the date. That date's going to go into H4, so dot range H4 dot value equals date, set date. Next up, I also want to make sure that we're going to select dot range. So we're going to select E3, and that's going to give the user the ability to add a name, dot select. So that's it. That's all we need for that macro. That is easy. Next up, what we want to do is we want to be able to save and update that once again with the ERP. We're going to move into that ERP, and if I want to make sure when we save it, we have to have a name. So dot range, which is going to be E3 right here. If that range is value equals empty, then let the user know. We'll do message box, please enter a name for this order before saving. Exit sub and then end if. So now that we have that, we ensure that there is a name. We can move on. I need to know if it's a new order or not. If dot range B3 is going to keep track of that row equals empty, then it's a new order. Else existing order and then end if. So now that we have that, if it's a new order, simply I want to add in a brand new order row. Order row is going to be equal to, we're going to go into the order sheet and I'm going to go use the list objects because I've got a table on that and it's called orders. And inside that, we're going to use the list rows. Those list rows are simply going to be count and then plus 3. I'm adding 3 because our first row here starts on row 3. So when we want to add 3, that's going to give us the next available row. And that's exactly what I want. When I do figure out what row that is, what I want to do is I want to set the next ID. So dot range B2, our next ID, dot value is going to take on whatever's in B4. So we're going to do a range and then B4. Okay, so once we have that, I also want to set, let's do orders. Range. So inside our orders in column A and the order row, let's do order, ORD, okay? So we're keeping it quick. ORD is the order row. Dot value is equal to dot range, whatever is in B2. This is our next ID. So now that we have that, we're good to go. Else, what if it's an existing? If it is an existing, all we need to do is set the order row from whatever's in B3. So our order row is equal to B3. Okay, next up, what we want to do is simply add in our data. I'm not using data mapping on this. So orders dot range B and order row dot value is equal to, this is going to be our name. So our name is going in column B dot range, and our name is coming from E3 dot value. So this is our name. Now it's just simply a matter of copying and pasting and then updating. So we have additional B, C, D, E, and F. So what do I mean by that? We have B, C, D, E, and F, all the way to column F. We need to add in all those values. Also, I just wanted to take a quick moment to share with you one of the best applications that I've ever developed for coders called the Ultimate Developers VBA Library. You can quickly and easily search for any macro of up to over 500 macros You can also quickly and easily copy and paste any macro into your code in just a few seconds. If that wasn't fast enough, I've also integrated a very simple auto hotkey where you can use any shortcut keys to quickly automate your coding. You can also create your own macros, as many as you like. And that's the Ultimate Developers VBA library, and I'm going to include the links down below. Thanks so much. So to do that, we're just going to update these C, D, E, and F, and we're going to update the ranges. So for this one, this is going to be our type. This is going to be our date, total, and we're going to add in our status. So we just need to update that. Our type is coming from E1, as we see that our type right here, E1, that's where we want to set that type. We also want to save the date. The date, of course, is coming from H4, so we're going to add that in, H4. After the date, we want to add in the total. If we take a look here, our total is in H36. So we're going to add that in H36. Now we save the total, but when we load it, we don't load the total back. And the status, of course, is coming from H5. So H5. Okay, once we have that, we've saved all the initial data. Now what we want to do is we want to determine the last item row. I want to loop through these items and I want to save them to the database. If they've been saved before, in other words, if this is existing, I'm going to put that order row in C. So I'm going to look in column C. If it's free, that means it's not been saved. If it contains a number, that means it has already been saved to this database. This is where we're going to save it. We're going to put in the ID, the type, and all the information in the order items. So first thing I want to do is determine the last row. So let's go ahead and pull that up. So the last row is equal to .range, and then we'll use D35.end, and then we'll do XLUp.row. So this is our last item row. If the last item row is less than 7, that means there's no items, then go to, and then we'll do no items. So if there's no items, we'll skip saving it. No items, and we'll just go down here, no items. So assuming that there are items, what I want to do is I want to determine if it's previously been saved. If .range, we're looking in column C. C and the item row, we're going to loop. Oh, let's create that loop first. For the item row is equal to, starting in row 7, that's our first possible 7 to the last item row. And then we're going to close our loop here, next item row. Now we can check if C in the item row dot value equals empty, then it's not been saved, else saved already. Okay, so if it hasn't, then we want to add it in. So we're going to grab that item. So the item database row is going to be equal to the order items. Now I want to find the last possible row. So we're going to use the list objects, and I have a named range called order items. Inside that order items, I want to determine list rows, and then I want to use count, and then again, once again, +3. So this is the first available one. So that's going to get us our item row. Now what we want to do is that item row, I want to place directly inside here. I want to record it. So this is going to be equal to the item row. Basically, it's going to set that item row so we know exactly where it's been saved. Once we have that inside item, so our order items here, inside range, .range, I want to place the ID A and the item database row .values equal to what? I'm going to show you in one moment. B2, that is our order ID .value, order ID. And basically what that means is I want to place the order ID directly inside here, column A. All right, that's going to be it for this. Else, if it's saved already, what do I know? I know that our item row is simply going to be here. So it should be database row. So that means simply need our item database row. It's going to equal to whatever's located in C. So it's an existing, it's been saved already. And next up, what we want to do is I want to then save the remaining items, meaning I want to also save the order type. That's going to go in B. So here, I'm going to copy this here. I'm going to put this in column B. I want to know the order type. Now, what is that order type? Equals whatever's located in E1. That is our order type .value. Now, what I want to do is pretty much save it from C. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it here. C all the way to, let's look at this. From C, item, description, quantity, and total. All of those columns must get saved. I also want to add in the row formula too. That's one thing. So the row formula is going to H, but it's only for new items. So I'm going to copy this. I'm gonna paste it down here, and this is an H. Our formula is gonna go in here. And then we're gonna add in that formula, equals row. Almost forgot that. Now that we have that, so here all the way from C, we need to add the and. Here, what we wanna do is go all the way through G. So we're gonna add the colon G, and the item database row is equal to what? It's equal to orders. So all we need to do is just add in dot range. Now they're going to take a look. It's coming from, we see inside our ERP, we need to save basically the item name all the way from D through H. Okay, so D through H, we're just going to bring that over. So we're going to set D and the item row all the way through H and the item row dot value. So order details. Okay, and that closes our loop. So basically we're saving everything to the database. Once we have that, we just need to skip down here and we are good to go. So we're end with, and we can just remove that. Once we have that, we also want to be able to load it, and it's going to be very similar. So once again, with the ERP, we're going to focus on that sheet. We want to make sure that when they search for it, remember, if they put in a search here, that order number is going to come at B5. We have to have a value in B5. So if it's empty, if .range B5 equals empty, then they have incorrect order number. So we're going to do a message box. Please enter a correct order ID. And then we're going to exit the sub. Now, assuming that they have, all we need to do is assign that to the variable. So to do that, I want to set that order number. So .range B2. B2 is going to take on .value, whatever they've entered. That is in H1. So H1 .value. So set order ID. Once we have the order ID set, we can set the order row. Now the order row is simply whatever's located in B3. So I'm going to copy this and just put it down here and change that to B3. So we have our order row. Once we have our order row, we can then load the rest of the items. Now the rest of the items are simply pretty much what we have done here, but in the reverse. Now we don't want to load in the total, but I do want to load in these three. So I'm going to copy them, and I also want to add in the status. I'm going to copy those, and then we just simply have to reverse it. So what do I mean by that? That means we're simply going to bring our name and bring it over here, and we're simply going to do the same thing for each one, and then we're also going to do the equals as well. Okay, so now that we've got all the main value, what I want to do is I want to look in specific items to see if there's any items that are ready. So we need to load in all of those orders. Now I need to know exactly which order items are available for B2. And so what we need to do is we need to link this order ID with our order item. So I'm just going to do equals here, which is our order item, all the way to orders. So that's going to be our advanced filter right here, meaning I'm going to look through all these order numbers. I want to use the criteria order ID, and I only want to return the items that are available for the given order. And then what we're going to do is we're going to run a loop and just copy this information over. So to do that, we're going to just run a little bit of an advanced filter via our order items. So let's go ahead and do that right now. We're going to focus on that sheet with order items. That's the sheet. I want to know the last row of that so we can run our advanced filter. So our last row is going to be equal to, and let's use the list items because we have a table, so that won't be very helpful. So I'm going to use inside there, we'll do .list objects, and then I want to determine what is our order items. If we don't remember, we just simply look on here and we see that it's called order items. So we know that, and I'm going to use that, and I want to determine the number of dot, and then here list rows dot count, and that's going to list all the rows here. So that's going to be sufficient. Now that we have the last row, what we want to do is I want to run that advanced filter. So we're going to use, and we'll just update that. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. It's row 2. So A2 is where our advanced filter is going all the way to column H. Our criteria is going to be found in L2 through L3. So I'm going to update that, L2 through L3. And also our results are going to come O through S. So it's O2, let's go ahead and scroll that over and bring this over a little bit. O2 all the way through S. So this is our advanced filter. Now we're going to determine the last results row. So the last results row is going to be based on column O. So we're going to set that up. If it's less than 3, that means we have no data. So the last results, that means we can exit the sub, or yeah, that's fine. We can exit the sub. So now that we know that we have data, we can continue and simply bring all of this data into our ERP right here. but I want to put starting in column C all the way through G. So once again, we're going to focus on the ERP dot range, and we're going to focus on C7 all the way through G and the last result row +3. Actually, we're going to do +4. Why are we adding 4? I'm adding 4 because our results start on row 7 here, but they start on row 3 before inside our order items. So dot value is equal to dot range. And where's our results coming from? It's coming from right here, O through S in the last results row. So we can do dot range, O3 through S and the last result row dot value. So bring over our order items. Okay, so once we have brought in our order items, we can then update that. Now, the only thing is when we make a change to when I make a change to here, we load in the description, but I don't want that change to take an effect. So what we need to do is we need to, just for this here, we need to turn off application.enable events equals false, meaning I don't want to trigger this change. You know how we have a change here? I don't want to trigger that when I bring in the items. So to do that, we're turning off events, and then right after we bring it in, we can turn those events on again. So we're just temporarily turning them off. So that looks good. I think it's sufficient. We'll fix any errors as we come across them. Printing is very simple. It's just erp.print. I'll just keep it at that. erp.print out. So once we have that, I want to set the print range. To do that, I'm simply going to select our order, and I'm going to go into the page layout here, and we're just going to click set the print area. Next up, last up is the delete. So we're going to delete that. I'm going to keep that very simple. So to do that, I simply want to focus message delete. Are you sure you want to delete this? And then I'll just put order and delete order. And if no, they'll exit the sub out. So once I have that, now we're going to go with our ERP, and I want to make sure if dot range, we need to have a row. B3 is where our row is, equals empty, then go to not saved. So we're going to skip down here, and if it's not been saved, not saved. They'll skip deleting it. If it has been saved, we're going to grab that order row. We're going to grab it right from B3. So I just need to copy this. And once we have it equals, let's do B3. And then I just simply want to delete it from the order. So orders.range, and then the order row and the order row dot entire row dot delete. Great, so we've deleted it. Now what we want to focus on is the order items. With order items, I want to delete the individual items. They're going to be there as well. So to do that, I want to know the last row. So last row is equal to, we'll just do it easy, XLR range. And actually, let's do the same thing we did here. So we have the last row of the order. I'm simply to copy that. We've already done it. Now, once we have the last row, if the last row is less than 3, then exit sub. I simply want to run for the item row is going to be equal to 3, 2, let's do the last row, or let's go in reverse. The last row, 2, 3. So the reason is, as I'm deleting, so we're going to step -1, and then we're going to close our loop, next item row. And I'm simply going to make a check. If dot range, we're looking in column A and the item, I'm looking for that order ID. Row dot value is equal to the order ID. We didn't define the order ID. Let's do that right now. Just to make things easier, I'm going to dimension the order ID as a string, and I'm going to set the order ID. That's going to be based on B2. So I'm just going to copy this. I'm going to set an order ID is going to be equal to B2, and we'll set that. Now, once we know the order ID, basically I'm going through these items. I'm looking at the order ID, and if it's got the right order ID, I'm going to delete it. But I'm starting in the last row and I'm going to the first. Because we're deleting rows, when we delete, we need to start at the bottom and go to the top. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing inside our code. So if range equals the order ID, then what do we want to do? I want to delete it, then dot range, and then it's going to be basically our item row here, and the item row deleted, and colon, and the item row dot entire row dot delete. So that's pretty easy. We just do a loop, and we're going to run through our orders. All right, once we have that, that's going to be deleted, and we got the printout. So I think we're good to go with the macros. We're going to assign those macros. We're going to test everything out and make some fixes if we need to, because I programmed this rather fast. So there's certainly, I've got 2 workbook open, a sample, so add new. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add the save order. We're going to assign that macro, order, save and update. We're going to go to the print order. And then we're going to add in a mini dashboard. We're going to assign the macro to the print, so you don't want to miss that. And lastly is the delete order. So we're going to assign the macro, and this is going to be for delete. Once we've assigned all the macros that we need to, we're going to save our work so far. And before running the macros, why do we do that? Because if I clear too many cells, we can easily save it. We're going to fix this issue here. E in the target row. Now we see that the product row is 0, right? So we know we didn't find what we needed to find here. So if we see the target value is empty, so obviously we can't use that. All right, we just want to make sure if we're changing a large number of cells, if target, then we're going to exit the sub. So let's do it again. Oh, let's fix that 1 second. Click new order. So it's working fine now. All right, let's continue on. So we want to be able to save the order and load the order. So when I hit 1, when I make a change to this, I want to trigger an order load. So how do we do that? That's going to be on the change of H1. So let's go ahead and go back into the code. We're going to go into the ERP. And this, of course, is here on when we make a change to the item. So we're going to put a little note here saying on item change. Now on item search is something else, on item search. Now when we make a search, that is going to be based on cell H1. And we also want to make sure that H1 is not empty, and range H1.value does not equal empty. And I also want to make sure that B5 is not empty. B5.value does not equal empty. Then what do I want to do? We can keep B5 empty because we have a warning a little bit later. So we can just say then order load. So we're loading the order on the change of H1. So now when I double click here, it's going to automatically update. Okay, so let's give this a try. I'm going to double click here, see if we run it. So we see that the order is loading, and that's exactly what we want. Perfect. So once we have that, so we see that the purchases are loading, everything's loading, we're good to go. So we now have these row numbers, but I don't really want to see them there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to highlight this range. I'm going to go in and I'm going to change this to 2 semicolons because numbers, and we can just hide them. 2 semicolons will do just that. Now they're hidden, but they still exist. Very good. Things are looking quite good. We have the load. We have, let's go ahead and check the save. The last item row is not, I think, let's do last row. And that should just be last row, not last item row. So continue on. And then once again, we're going to put in this last row so that we have that. So that's fine. We're going to update that and things are looking good. So saving it. Now let's go add in a brand new order. Let's do a purchase here. And we're going to add in a vendor here. We will create 2 items on this to make sure that they're purchased. The cost is going to come up. We're going to set the quantities. And then we're simply going to save the order. Order number 9. We're going to look inside the orders. We see number 9 is correct. We didn't add a status on that. Let's just add a status just to make sure that it saves correctly. And we click save one more time. We see that it's updating. If we look in our order items for 9, we have everything is updated. Perfect. So it's looking good. Now we just need to print it. It'll print to the default printer. We're going to make sure that that snag is mine. That's looking good. And lastly, let's go ahead and delete. We're going to delete. Are you sure you want to delete this order? Yes. There's only one thing I forgot to do, and I want to click the add new. So on delete, we just need to put the add new. That's going to clear everything out. So we're just going to copy that. And we're going to go down here and we're going to paste that in here. All right, we're good to go. So we got all the macros running. Now we are ready to add in our mini dashboard. Okay, the first thing what we want in our mini dashboard is I want to know what products we need. I want to know those that are low on stock level. Inside the products, we have in stock, but we don't know how many are in stock. Now we need a formula for this, and it's pretty much the total purchased minus the total sold. So we can use equals sum ifs. Now it's going to be based on the sum range. So what is going to be that sum range? It's going to be the order items, and then it's based on the quantity. So I want to know all those quantity. Now it's just not the quantity. We also need some criteria, and I only want to know the order items based on the type. So it's the order type is going to be purchases. So only for those purchases do we want, but not only for all purchases, only for purchases of a specific item. So what is it going to be? So it's order items, and it's going to be based on a very specific item ID. So the order items is going to be based on this item, and the item is going to be right here. So this is the item right here inside B3. So that's going to tell us all of those that were purchased. In total, we have purchased 5 of those. I want to subtract out everything we've sold. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to use the minus and I'm going to paste it here. Now, the only difference between this is instead of purchase, I want to look for invoice. So I'm going to say invoice. I want to subtract out all those and we see that's 2. Now all we need to do is just double click this and copy down. And we have the total stock. Now that we have that, I'm going to then insert a pivot because I want to know those that are low. So once again, I'm going to go into the insert here and I'm going to add a pivot chart. And I'm going to use the existing worksheet here. And I'm just going to select this cell right here, or we're going to use this one. Now, what I want to do is I'm just going to click OK. And I want to add in very specific items for this. So I want the item name, and I also want to know the stock. Basically, we're going to call this, instead of sum of stock, I want to know the quantity on hand. So we'll just call it quantity on hand. But I don't want to show all of them. I only want to show those very specific for low stock. So what I'm going to do is I want the value filters and I want less. I want to show only items, quantity on hand, that's less than 3. So we're going to just the ones that are low. It's going to leave us with this. Now I also want to sort the data. So I'm going to select on more sort options and I want to sort our quantity on hand A to Z and click OK. All right, so we've got that. Now, what I want to do is I want to add, probably not this, I'm going to change the chart type on here. So I'm going to click change chart type and we'll look for a bar and that's going to give us a little more spacing for the names. And I'm just going to click OK. And that's fine for now. I'm going to use Control X and then I'm going to bring that into our ERP and I'm going to paste it right about here. And I'm going to bring it here. Now we're ready to customize this alongside and I'm going to put it here. First of all, I don't need any of these buttons, so I'm going to hide all the buttons here. I'm going to then go into the format here, and I don't want any shape fill on that, and I don't want any border on that, so no outline. We also don't need any of these interior grid lines, so we can just select on individual ones and click delete. And also I want an updated label on that, so we're going to set that label to, let's just say, low stock levels. So I'm just going to use low stock levels. So that's good. Let's go ahead and format this. We'll give it a theme. We'll choose a specific font color for all of these and I'll use this one right here. And I'm going to set it to bold and I'm going to increase it so we can see it. Also, we don't need any lines on this. So I'm going to go in and use Control 1 and I'm going to format that here. And I'm going to remove the lines on this one. So no lines on that. We don't need this legend here. I can get rid of that. And these are looking pretty good. Now we're just going to format here. I want to fill it, but I use a gradient fill and we're going to use the same gradient fill throughout. This is not it. So I'm going to set the first color. Oops, a little bit off the screen here. Let's bring it onto the screen. I'm going to use a gradient and I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to set that first color to maybe this. And then the second and last color I'm going to set to this. And I'm going to get rid of any remaining colors here and here. Now, let's take a look at this. Let's use a little bit lighter color here. So something that's good. But on this angle, I want to change the angle of that. So let's go ahead and just use this one. I want dark to light. That's exactly what I want. We're going to format these. So let's go into the format. I'm going to add a little bit of a shadow on that, just a default shadow. And we're just going to add a 3D format on that. We're not going to make this look too amazing, but that's going to be sufficient. I'm going to add some data labels onto that. So we're going to add those data labels. And I think we are good to go on this one. Okay, so we have our low stock. We will add the background onto that. I don't need this also, so we can save space. We just want to keep it simple and we want to know quickly our low stock levels. So we have from beginning to end. If we want to sort it from 0, we can do that too. I think that's going to be sufficient. All right, next one. I want to focus on our sales and purchases. So we're going to go to the orders and I want charts on each. So I'm going to click insert here and pivot chart, and we're going to pivot chart and table. Now I'm going to use an existing worksheet and we'll select here for the location. And the first one is simply just purchases by month. To do that, I want the date in the access categories and I want the total in the values. Now, as far as the date, I just want to show the month. So I'm going to remove this field for the date and I'm also going to remove the days field. And that's going to keep me with just months. Now, since I want to focus just on purchases, I'm going to take the type and I'm going to put it in the legend series. Now I just want purchases on this one, so I'm going to select the type and we're going to go to label filters, or you can simply just unselect invoice and click OK. And what that's going to do is it's going to leave us with just purchases. And then I'm going to change the label to purchases by month. Okay, that's good enough for that one. Now we're going to do exactly the same thing, except this time we want invoice. So I'm simply going to copy this and I'm going to paste it right here. But this time, instead of purchases, we want to use invoices. So all we need to do is just make that change here. So instead of purchases, we're going to select invoices and click OK. Now also what I want to do is I want to create charts for this one as well. And so I'm simply going to insert the chart for this. So here we go, insert. And then let's use a filled. We're going to change the other one too. We'll use the area chart, just a basic area chart, and I'm going to click OK. I want both of them as area charts. So this particular one, I'm going to change the chart type on this one. So changing the chart type. And once again, I'm going to choose area just like it is before. And I don't have a lot of data in here, but it gets the point. So invoices. So here we want sales by month. So we're going to call this sales by month. I can then take both of these and bring them over to my sheet. So I'm going to hold down the Control X is going to clear them from the current sheet, and then Control V is going to paste them both in here. And I'm going to place those on top of each other. So let's go ahead and do just that. Once we have it, we also want to make sure that we place them and we have the right. I can remove the buttons and clean these up. So once again, just like we've done before, I'm going to right click and we're going to hide all the buttons. I'm going to do the same thing for this, hide all the field buttons. And if we take a look at our dimensions here, our sheet is going to start out right here on column C. So I want these to extend at least all the way from about right here all the way to the edge of the sheet, which is going to be right about here. If we notice the width on this size here, we see that we have the width of 7.72. So we want to do exactly the same thing for this one and just set this to 7.72. Both of them have the same width, and we're going to put both of them in the middle. Now that we have those, we certainly don't need a lot of the value. So I'm just going to start cleaning these up here. Just individually, we want to keep these simple. I'm going to remove the grid lines. I'm going to remove the axis. We don't need them. And I will be adding some data labels. And I would also like a filled gradient here. I don't want these this high. I'm going to make these about a third. I'm going to set the height to these. So this is fine. About a third of the sheet is fine for our purposes. So our height is now 2.19 on this one. I'm going to do exactly the same for this one. We're going to see if that's enough or not. So we're going to set this one to 2.19. Once we've done that, I'm going to bring it down here. We're okay for the months. I am going to once again set the color here to make sure that it's set on our color. And we are going to increase the font and set it to bold. We want the format, no fill and no outline on that. We're going to do the same thing for here. No fill, no outline. We want to change the font color and size and increase this, and there we go. So now we have a pretty much, we don't need the legends here and we don't need them here. We do want to add data labels, and I'm going to use Control 1. What that's going to do, it's going to allow me to use a gradient fill for that. That looks okay, but in this case I want to use the gradient is going to be the vertical. So I'm going to change this. Let's bring this so you guys can see it. And then I'm going to change the direction. Let's do from dark to light on top of here. And we'll add a little bit of a transparency. So this one is good. Now I want to add a transparency to this lower color so we can increase this. I'm going to do exactly the same thing. And I like the way that that looks, like about a 70, we'll do 70% transparency. This exactly the same is going to be for this chart. So I'm going to also add the gradient for this one right here, and they're both matching. We will be adding a background onto these, and I like the way that that looks so far. Next up, we're going to turn our attention back to products where we want to get the products on hand by type. So once again, we're going to click Insert, and we're going to use a pie chart this time. I'll be adding a pivot chart and pivot table here. And we're going to use an existing worksheet location right about here. Should be fine. Now for these particular products, I really want the products on hand by type. So I really want to focus on the type. So I'm going to bring down here our category. And we have the category here inside the axis. Now what I would also want to do is I want to know the in stock. So I'm going to grab that stock here and we see there. So next up, what I would like to do is I want to sort this. That would be kind of nice. And let's take a look here. We'll do more sorting options. We will go ascending and then we will sort the sum of the stock and we're going to click OK. All right, so that's sufficient there. And I'm going to change this to a pie chart. So I'm going to right click, change the chart type, and we're going to look at the pie and I'll go with this and click OK. Now I'm going to bring this and then we're going to format it in. I'm going to Control X, go back to our ERP. I'm going to bring it inside here and I'm going to place it directly at the top here, right about here. So we're going to use the remaining room to fill in that we have. which is going to be right about here. All right, so now that we have that, I'm just going to bring it down here. I want to know the types, and let's take a look at this. I'm going to bring this up just so I can see exactly. We're doing pretty good on spacing. These are okay the way they are. We'll be adding a background to make things a little bit more visible. I just want to use as much space as I can and fill our area. Now, we also don't need these buttons. I'm going to right click and hide all the fields. We do need to format it so that its color is consistent with our theme, which is about something like that. That looks sufficient. I also want to add in some data labels, and we'll add in the categories why not instead of the legend. So to do that, I'm simply going to select it, and we're going to use Control 1. That's going to bring up our formats. Inside there, I do want to show the categories. We don't need the legend here. That would be too busy. So to do that, we can delete it. Just click it and delete it, or we can also customize that. All right, now that we have that, I want these outside in. So to do that, I'm going to set our label options, and we're going to be the outside end here. That's where we want it. I like the way that that's looking. Let's go ahead and customize the pie chart a little bit, just how we did before. I don't need any line on that, but I do want to have a shadow on that, just like we have before. So we're going to add in the shadow, and I'm going to add a little bit more blue on this. Let's see if we can something. Yeah, that's a little bit closer to our theme. We also going to add in top bevel on that. That's pretty good, except it's a bit too much. Let's just reduce the bevel here. We don't need it so big. Okay, so now that we have that, we also want to make sure that we get rid of any of the backgrounds. So I'll double click on here and we'll use no fill. That's looking pretty good. We do want to use the same font color and increase the size just as we've done on the other ones. We can bring the labels over so that there's a little bit more spacing. Here, we can do that individually, just adds a little bit of spacing. All right, so now that we have everything the way we want it, next up, let's add a top selling. I want to know the top 5 selling products. So to do that, we need to go into the order items here to grab that. And I want to use, once again, a pivot table and chart. So we're going to click Insert, just as we've done before, pivot table and chart. And I'm going to bring it over here, and let's close this and going to bring it new location. So we want the top 5 selling parts. So to do that, I want the item, and I want to know the quantity sold, but I only want to know the top 5. So we want to add a filter on that. So how do we do that? So let's go ahead and bring it over here. Let's pin this for a moment so we can scroll a bit. I am going to get a filter on that. So we want a value filter, and we want to know the top 10 or top 5. I want to know the top 5 items summed by quantity, and click OK. That's going to get us the top 5. We also want to sort it based on quantity. I'll use A to Z on that one, descending, and it's going to be the item quantity, and I'm going to click OK. All right, so now let's do descending here, not Z to A, A to Z. So let's go back into the more sort options and do A to Z. I want A to Z. Now that we have that, I want to create, we've already got a chart here. That's going to be sufficient for our purposes. I'm going to right click and I'm going to hide all the fields. Once again, Control X. We're going to update the name on that, and we're going to paste it in here. We also need to do the name here. So we need the products on hand by type. And obviously we need to reduce the size of the inner chart here. So to do that, we'll just select the table here, and I'm going to reduce the chart so that we can have space for everything. And I'll bring it down a little bit. And we want to center this. Once it's centered, we can then have enough space for our last chart, which is going to be right up here. This, of course, is going to be our top 5 selling products. So we're going to bring that up here, and we're going to reduce the size of it. And we're going to give this a name. This is going to be called our top 5 selling products. So our top 5 selling products. Once again, we're going to customize this just as we have done before to make sure that it is consistent with our theme, removing the grids as we don't need them, and removing the axis. We don't need that. I also want to make sure that we are going to remove the fill and the border on this. We also want to add a gradient onto this. So I'm going to select on these, Control 1 to relaunch our format. Going into the fill, going into the gradient here, we're going to use a reverse gradient on here. I want it similar to what our other one was. So this one is not going to take on any transparency. I'm going to reverse this because I want it just like the other one. So we're going to change the direction here, and we're going to use it from light to dark, which is right here. We're also going to go into the shadow. We're going to add a shadow on that one. I also want to add just the 3D format, just as we've done before, so that it's consistent. We're going to add data labels onto that. So adding the data labels, And also we want the font, just as we've done before, setting our color bold here and increasing the font so it's consistent. So now it's pretty much good. Top selling products. We have products on hand. That looks pretty good. I want to make sure the color is consistent. What we want to do now is add a little background so it's a little bit easier. So I'm going to click Insert and I'm going to click a shape and I'm going to use a rounded rectangle. And I'm just going to use it on one of these. And once we get it just the way we want it, we can then duplicate it. So I'm going to use a rounded corner here. I'm going to use no border on this one. So I'm going to set it to no border. And I want let's go no outline. I'm going to use a light blue to white fill. So I'm going to use a gradient fill on this one. We're going to set the top to a very light blue and we'll set the transparency on that. And then I'm going to use the bottom as white actually on this one here. So it's going to be something like this here. However, what I want to do is I want to reverse those. I want it light blue to white. To do that, we're setting the direction. We want the light blue on the top and the white on the bottom like that. Now we're going to focus on the transparency on that. I'm going to select the blue. I want this almost transparent, so it's going to be right around 80% or 75 is sufficient. The white will have a little bit less. Maybe we will set the transparency on the white about like that. So I like the way that that looks, but obviously we need to put it behind, but not just yet. So I'm going to just set this to the right size where it should go, and I'm going to hit Control D. I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm going to bring it down to the bottom. So each one is going to need its own, and we can just reduce the size of these a little bit. So things are looking pretty good. These are going to, remember, these are going to go behind once we duplicate them all. I'm going to use Control D one more time. And I want one for the top here. So we're going to set this one to the top and I'm going to bring it down here. All right, that's looking good. And then I'm going to do it one more time. We're going to use this one for the background of these. Once we have all the sizes just right, we're simply going to put all of those in the back with one click. So I'm going to bring it down here, setting it just to the back. Now I can hold down the control, select all of the shapes, and then move them directly on the back. Oops, I think we missed one here. So let's select this one. I must have customized it. One more right here on the top. This one's a little bit bigger. Okay, so now we can select them all, and then we're simply going to move them to the back. We're going to just clean things up a little bit. We're going to add some data labels onto this chart here. So I'm going to right click and then add the data labels. And then let's bring them up a little bit here, just so we can see them up above. And I think that's pretty good. Also, we're going to do the same thing on this one. I want to add the data labels. Let's scroll up so you can see what I'm doing here. We're going to add the data labels. All right, now that we understand the sales by month, we understand the purchases by month, we have this mini dashboard that's looking pretty good. Let's clean up our screen here. In just 60 minutes, we went from a blank worksheet to a complete ERP with purchases, orders. We were able to have products, orders, and items, and even names with a dynamic named range list, including all the code, formulas, and functions, and a mini dashboard. I hope you have appreciated this just as much as I love bringing these to you. Thank you so much for your continued support, and we'll see you next week.